Get ready to zoom in for some previews. The first game we will be in Nashville to talk about Missouri at Vanderbilt. Here at your Sports Outpost, as we're diving in, this is number 9 versus number 10. It's a top 10 matchup, a proper fight here in the Southeastern Conference. Missouri is 6-1, 2-1 in the Southeastern Conference. Vanderbilt is also 6-1, 2-1. Both teams have suffered losses in conference against Alabama, as Vanderbilt going into this matchup is a 2.5-point favorite. Very similar vibes to the game last weekend against LSU, with the lines being set. Overall, the series is led by Missouri with a 11-4 record with one tie. The last time Vandy has won this game was in 2019 when Barry Odom was in charge of Missouri. So under Drinkwitz has not happened. The first meeting between the two was back in 1895. Ooh, gotta go back a couple centuries for the first time these two have met. And in last year's encounter for 2024, it was a 30-27 final in double overtime where Missouri got out alive there in Columbia. The head coaches for this matchup, we got Eli Drinkwitz, who I already mentioned, for the Tigers, and Clark Lee, who's doing extraordinary things for the Commodores. Drinkwitz with Missouri last weekend also had another double overtime affair against Auburn there on the road, 23-17, as they continue to roll in conference. And again, like we mentioned, Bama has already beaten Missouri, who had a very, very bad game, but kept it close, 27-24 at home with that loss to the Crimson Tide. They already beat South Carolina earlier this season, 29-20, and had the encounter between them and Kansas for the Border War, which returned 42-31 over the Jayhawks. For Clark Lee, last week he had a very impressive win over LSU, 31-24 at home, losing to Alabama a couple of weeks prior on the road in Tuscaloosa, 30-14, a game that was a hell of a lot closer than that scoreline. And then also beat South Carolina 31-7, a hell of a lot more impressive win there in Nashville earlier in the season. And then went over to Blacksburg, Virginia to beat Virginia Tech 44-20, which unfortunately led to the firing of Brent Pry there for the Hokies. The big question we are going to be asking for this game is, who's going to run the ball and move it better on the ground, as both of these teams are top 15 rushing squads. Missouri is 5th best with their rush offense, as Vanderbilt is 14th best in the country at the moment. The Tigers average 249.3 yards per game. On the opposite sideline, the Commodores are averaging 215.7 yards. So a lot of things being done on the ground, as both have been very, very effective against pretty decent competition, to be quite honest with you. Most of the season so far now has been through SEC teams. On average per carry, Missouri is 17th in the country with 5.3 yards per attempt. That's some pretty nasty stuff. That's halfway down to that first down marker. But for Vandy, who at one point in this season were number 1, they have dropped down to 3rd in the country for per rush attempt, with 6.4 yards per carry. That is even more disgusting stuff. But for either team, they will be going up against somewhat a top 15 rush defense, technically top 16. Vandy is 16th in the country. They're giving up about 99.5 yards per game. And then Missouri, the number 2 rush defense in the country, as they're barely giving up 75 yards, as they're averaging 72.5. So this is going to come down to who's going to be pounding the rock a hell of a lot better. You got Ahmed Hardy, who is hands down the best running back in the country at the moment. And then you have a rushing attack on the other side with Diego Pavia and Cedric Alexander. That 1-2 combo has been giving everybody a hell of a lot of trouble. But yeah, running the ball is going to be very important and being very not just effective but efficient, controlling that clock on top of all that. But you guys, Diego Pavia is pretty legit. I had some doubts going into the season. I love the trash talking, but he's been backing it up pretty well. At the moment, he has just under 1,600 yards passing, which puts him around 50th in the country. I know 50th isn't too impressive, but you see the amount of rushing yards he's also putting up, and it's pretty decent as he's 75th in the country, and that's compared to running backs with 438 yards from 77 carries. And on top of that, he's averaging 5.7 yards per attempt. That's 67th in the country. And again, he's a quarterback, not a tailback, which is pretty impressive. What is more impressive is his efficiency through the air. Right now, he's completing about 70.5% of his pass attempts. That's 14th in the country. And per throw, it's about 8.5 yards per completion. That is 27th in the nation. And on top of that, he has 15 passing touchdowns. That's 18th. He's only thrown 4 interceptions, was sacked 5 times, and hasn't been sacked more than once in a game so far this season. So he's very good at evading pressure, which on top of that, you already see the lethalness that he adds with his legs. He has 4 rushing touchdowns, so a total of 19 so far this season. But again, he's very efficient through the air, like I already mentioned. 165.2 passer rating, which is 15th in the country. That is basically all the stats that we just talked about, put in a nice equation and then squeezes out that number. He's actually 7th in QPR with an 85.2, so he's pretty legit. Like, I was not expecting him to be this good so far this season. I think in our top 25 quick pick for week 9, we were mentioning that we didn't see them beating South Carolina or LSU. They have already got the job done there. A very close game against Alabama. I mean, last week alone, he only threw 160 yards, which is kind of surprising against LSU. But overall, he's been doing a lot of good stuff in terms of total yards per game. He had 246 against the Tigers last week again, 256 against Alabama, 201 against South Carolina, and then 254 against Virginia Tech. Averaging all that out, he's getting 239.25 yards per game. So basically, the offense obviously runs through Diego Pavia, but it's also a good thing because of how efficient is him through the air. He's not really making much mistakes. Didn't throw an interception last week, but on top of that, he's not having to make big plays. The big plays are coming out of the ball distribution and just simply handing it off. Last week, he only went no farther than 25 yards through the air and then 21 on the ground, which I think that 21-yarder was him scrambling for a touchdown against LSU. And he's just been absolutely lethal against these power conference teams that he's come up against so far this season. And he'll continue to build this resume. The last night, DGen Takes, Noah was talking about Diego Pavia in the NFL draft and where he might end up. And I was like, not even thinking about that. But yeah, he has a lot of potential to play, I think, at the next level. If he continues to be able to not only distribute the ball really well, but protect it and put his team in very good winning positions. Yeah, I think the next level will definitely be a Diego Pavia zone that he can cover. I think this next section is kind of combined with this game comes down to. But another thing to mention, both offenses scoring early is going to be very key in this, as I would say both programs have been relying on that going into that second half and kind of allowing themselves not to hit an extra gear if needed, because they kind of shut things down between who they go up against. Vandy, they're 21st in the country with first quarter scoring. They get about 8.2 points per quarter. They begin the game. Missouri's 36th in the country. They'll get about 7.3 points per first quarter. And then it's kind of interesting how they end the first half, as Vanderbilt is 7th in the country. They'll get about 21.3 points per first half, and then Missouri is 22nd in the country with 18.7. So it's definitely going to come down to getting your points early on, because both of these defenses know how to adjust pretty well. As we see that Missouri at the moment is giving up 6.8 points in that first quarter, but they adjust pretty well. That then puts them at 88th. But when it comes to the first full half, they're 57th with 12.5. As that is what Vanderbilt will be coming up against. The Commodores on defense, seems like their adjustments after the first quarter seem to wear off in terms of preparation, because they're giving up 5 points in the first quarter. That's 57th. And then when it comes to the end of the first half, those points increase to 14 per first half, which is 76th. So that's a thing to pay attention to, is both of these teams in the first quarter and being able to, score and then obviously make those halftime adjustments, and then being able to slow down each other, especially in the running game that we've already talked about. One last thing we want to mention is 2024's third down numbers. Vandy was 4 for 14, as Missouri was 7 for 17. So definitely want to score those early points, as both of the teams that are coming up against each other last year weren't very good on that down, as that's where this game is going to come down to, is the success on third down. We see Kevin Coleman Jr., who has been a great outlet for Bo Pipola. He has been just a guy that extended drives throughout this season so far. Obviously, Marquise Johnson is more of the home run hitter or drive finisher. And then on the other side, Eli Stoller, I think I'm pronouncing that right, the tight end for Vanderbilt, has been pretty key in picking up first downs as well. But for Vandy, they are second in the country at the moment for third down conversions, 54.1% percentage in that conversion. For Missouri, they're 8th, 51.14. We'll see if that translates this upcoming weekend, because it's pretty interesting. Missouri kind of flips it in terms of being better on defense, in terms of stopping their opponents on third down, as they're 8th in the country, 28.75% conversion rate in their opponents that they have coming up against. As Vandy, not so good on third down. They are 75th in the country, as it's a 40.24% chance of their opponents converting on that down. So again, this game will come down to the success, as I already mentioned, the 2024 numbers and how bad it was for either side, as I was definitely below 500. And yeah, we shouldn't expect the second and eighth best team to hit so well on third, and we might have to see some gambles on fourth down as well, which I unfortunately didn't have those numbers ready for this. But yeah, this game comes down to success on third down, as the injuries going into the weekend, not too many for either side. We've already mentioned previous previews for Missouri. Their kicker Blake Craig, who has been out since the first week, and then Sam Horn as well, are both out for this contest. They lose some depth in the guard and tackle positions, as the backup Logan Ryarch is questionable with an undisclosed injury. For Vanderbilt, they do have a pretty long list, but non-key more than defensive tackle. I'm going to butcher this last name and first name. Yilian Otara, the defensive tackle there for the Commodores, is questionable with an undisclosed injury and hasn't had too crazy of numbers, even though on the depth chart he's technically starting. But we'll see how many snaps he gets this weekend. My pick, though, for the game is going to go with Vanderbilt. This is a very close coin toss. A 2.5 point spread so far set for the weekend. I think Vandy wins by 4 points. Last year, it was a 3-point difference, so I'm kind of staying in and around that range. I also think, again, the Commodores are going to flip the 2024 outcome on its head and be the better team. I think this upcoming weekend, it's a massive game. Basically, just like last week when we said LSU versus Vanderbilt is a mini playoff game in its own kind of way, as this is another weekend where if either one wins, they're in better position to make the playoff as that 3 or 4 SEC team. But I also think it's going to be very ugly. But between the two, I think Vandy will have more of the clutch moments against Missouri. But there are some studs on that Tigers defense that you cannot not mention. Zion Williams, the defensive end, he is 19th in the country for tackles for loss. He has 9.5 so far this season. And then transfer from West Virginia from this past offseason, Josiah Trotter, who is 27th in the country with 8 tackles for loss. We should expect these guys to make some big impacts this upcoming weekend. As let us know who you think is going to win this game. Do you got Missouri? Do you got Vanderbilt? We're going to go with Vandy again by 4 points difference. What's your score line, score difference? Let us know in the chat in the comments down below. As we're going to zoom out.